Well, without further ado, I would love to introduce Scott. So tonight's speaker is Dr. Scott Newton. Scott is a paramedic and nurse practitioner with 35 years of experience working at the intersection of critical care, emergency medicine, and global adventure in urban, suburban, and austere environments. And a personal story, I met Scott when I was doing a rotation in Yellowstone, and our his villain origin story for me started because one night I came into our clinic. We were living in the lake clinic, another student and I, and all of a sudden I was coming down the hallway late at night and I saw this gentleman walking towards me and everything was locked. So imagine my surprise to find him there. And lucky for me, of course, it was Scott and I got to pick his brain. He introduced himself, explained the situation. He was working on a search and rescue that was taking up a ton of time. And so it was great that he was able to get some rest. And I, of course, kept him from rest, picking his brain, asking him all the questions. So now you guys get to do the same because he agreed to still come and talk to us.
Thanks, Leanne. And you gave me brownies, I think, too.
I did. I did.
Well, thanks so much for inviting me to talk with you all. This is a humbling group of people to be before. I'm sure many of you have had your own experiences and you're experts in your own right. And I'm just glad to be able to share this my own experience with being at Yellowstone the last couple of years and having been immersed in all things emergency services. I put together a case series for tonight, and I'll take you through that, and then we'll have a period of time for some conversation and chat about that, or really anything else that you want to talk about. I've been doing this for about a minute or two. I started off in the 1980s, originally as an EMS dispatcher, became an EMT, a paramedic, in 1990 at age 18 actually. Became a nurse at 21. Got a bachelor's degree in nursing science from University of Pittsburgh. I have a master's in health administration from the University of Maryland, and then I've got my doctorate from Johns Hopkins, where I was the director of emergency medicine for several years. So I've done a few things, but I want to just put some things out here. First of all, I've got no financial interest to declare. I am not an official representative of the U.S. Department of the Interior or the National Park Service in this capacity. These are my personal experiences and the lessons that I've learned in my observations. And I'm certainly no SAR expert. But I am learning, and I certainly enjoy being a student. If you ask my wife what I do for a living, she tells you that I'm a professional student. The objectives really for tonight is just to explore four real-world search and rescue events that happened while I was at Yellowstone. And I'm a high reliability geek, so I put them within a framework of high reliability. And hopefully this will help current and future wilderness responders think about their own practice. So, where's Yellowstone National Park? I know I thought I knew where it was, but in reality, I didn't. So, let me just orient you to where it is on the map. You can see it's sort of at the intersection of the states of Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming. The majority of the park is actually in the state of Wyoming, although it is federal land. It is within those three jurisdictions, and so there's a cross-pollination of jurisdiction and cooperation and coordination that happens with those three states. It is in a little bit of Montana and a little bit in Idaho. And it is also the world's first national park, which is really interesting. I guess I didn't really appreciate that. I just kind of thought that national parks were just sort of always around. 1872 was declared the world's first national park. The footprint of Yellowstone is 2.2 million acres. And what's kind of interesting and fascinating to me is only 1 to 3% of the park is actually developed. So that means, we've got a fair amount of the park that's still natural and fairly austere. It becomes Wyoming's third most populated city during the peak season, with a number of people sleeping out in the backcountry. So that's kind of something just sort of to think about from an emergency response perspective. There's about 50,000 people that are in the backcountry in any given day. There's about 4.7 million people that visit the Yellowstone National Park annually, and most of them come during the summer peak season between June 1st and September 1st. And let me tell you that half of them come in through the west entrance. So if you're coming to Yellowstone, think about using an alternative entry and exit point. The water temperature, because of the high elevation in the snowpack, stays about an average about 42 degrees Fahrenheit. So hypothermia is always something to be in mind. And it does have an extensive road network. So you can see we've got this sort of figure eight here, and we refer to this as the upper loop and the lower loop. And then we've got the five entrances. The west here, the north entrance is here, which is the only entrance that's open year round. We have the northeast entrance. We have the east entrance, which goes over towards Cody, Wyoming. And then we have the south entrance, which leads down into the Grand Tetons, which is an equally spectacular park to visit. And I recommend going to both if you're in the neighborhood. So this map's going to come up a few more times because I wanted to just get you oriented to the layout, and you'll see as we go through the different search and rescue missions that I was on, you'll see where they are in the park itself. So, what's high reliability? Well, HRQ really defines it as the ability to operate in a high hazard domains for extended periods without any serious accident or catastrophic failures. Much like this bison here that's wandering around Old Faithful, grazing, right? He's working in a hazardous area, and yet he's able to do that for an extended period of time without having any sort of serious incident. And they're pretty amazing to see. So here's how I like to think about high reliability from an operational or a sort of a pragmatic application perspective. So here's a framework that sort of translates five different domains in high reliability. So when we're talking about people, thinking about the leadership, team selection, how we're onboarding people and bringing them into the organization, what are their core talents and what sort of specialty skills do they have, and how do we put them into to fulfill the mission that we're attempting to accomplish. Second is the processes that exist, right? One is standardizing the process so that we understand what's expected and how we're going to function as an organization. But we also have to be adaptive and it has to scale across. So, you know, having a process, but also sort of holding loosely to the maybe some of the details of that, allowing it to morph over time, and then having that important structured feedback mechanism so that we can improve over time. The third is our technology, and I'll go into some specifics about what we use at Yellowstone here in a minute, but thinking about technology from sort of an analog, low tech perspective, and then those things, we're always talking about, everything that we want to do with our phones and so forth. And we just heard about a new app that's coming out that we want to test. And those are all great until we run out of power or we come out of an area that has coverage. And then any sort of specialty technology that we need. And that could be something as simple as just the equipment that we're carrying with us or have with us on a scene or responding to an event. The third is culture. Culture is what really drives your organization, and so that's all about making sure that you have the right training. You're cultivating that psychological safety. People feel safe working together. They want to be there. They want to work with the folks around them. Having shared values and a mental model and how we're going about our work. Making sure that we have cross monitoring and accountability. That's been described in some literature as having have your back ability, right? That's being able to trust the people around you that they've got your back. And then the fifth domain is really around the environment and understanding the environment that you're operating in and how that all comes together. And that gives rise to consistency, reliability, and sustainability for an organization to be able to perform at a high reliability level. So let me just take you through the search and rescue operation organization at Yellowstone and how they go about sort of applying these concepts to what they're doing and what I learned while I was there. So the people wise, the leadership team is very experienced. We've got an emergency services director that's got extensive experience working in the National Park Service. He's been around for many years. He's highly regarded. He's an expert in doing this type of work. He immediately comes and brings credibility to the organization just based on his history and his capabilities. Plus, he's a super nice guy. The second is the team selection and onboarding process. There's a formal application process that people go through. They are selected based on their capabilities, their background, their experience, and then slotted into a particular role. It's not like everyone gets to do everything. We try to put people into the area that they're most adapt for being a benefit for. And then there is a structured onboarding process. It's a five-level tier process that starts with just some basic understanding of terminology, going over basic equipment and basic functions of communication and those sorts of things, all the way up to the fifth level, which is command and control staff. And then looking at the individual core talents of people, some people bring unique talents to the team, such as swift water skills as perhaps a kayaker, or someone that has high angle or low angle technical skills. Some people are adept at land navigation and orienteering, and so we make sure that they have the basics, but we're also applying those special skills and putting them onto the specialty teams that also exist within the organization because it is an all hazards response organization. The processes within the search and rescue operation here at Yellowstone is standardized. It follows a very regimented process. An activation goes through the communication center. A dedicated communications channel is established. There is immediately a command call of the duty officer for emergency services and the search and rescue coordinator that's assigned for that day. And then the area command, who's responsible for a particular area. Maybe it's the duty ranger, or maybe it's the backcountry ranger who's responsible for a particular area that's on there, and then any additional resources that we think might be needed. And they're on the call for the initial size up and to decide on the initial response. It is adaptive and scalable based on search urgency and the criticality of the initial report. And then we move forward through a process as more information is gathered, we continuously reassess and then scale up or down or change search urgency based on that. And then at the end of each event, there is a structured feedback that happens. We do a hot wash or a hot debrief, different language for different organizations, but we do that. And Jim, that's our chief of emergency services there, and he likes to call it hot and not. So he says, okay, so hot, what worked well, and what's not working well, what's not hot. So what are the things that we didn't do so well or we want to do better on next time? And then the formal after action report is sort of written based on that initial collection of information and then additional details in the days following. Technology-wise, as I mentioned, we have a variety of different tools available to us from a technology standpoint. You can see here, this was one of our trainings. We had one person using a smartphone. We had two other people using pen and paper, and it's all sort of what you're most comfortable with. And we have different ways of communicating these sorts of things and using various tools such as the radios and so forth. Our analog technology really is sort of, goes back to sort of what I would call old school things. We've got, voice and tone pagers that activate our crews in the park. We've got a smartphone app that also activates within the park, but not all areas have coverage because we only have about 20% coverage for cell phones in the park. We use standard radios and on an analog, sometimes simplex, sometimes repeated frequency, depending on where you are. We've got a fairly developed radio network in the park, but there's always areas where you're trying to talk around a mountain or something, and radio waves don't go around corners very well. So that's always a challenge. And one nice thing that I really appreciated was they have this book which really just runs the event. Everyone carries one of these, and so if you come across an event or you're nearby when that event starts, you can just pull this book out, and it's designed to just run the operation for basically the first operational period of the 24 hours, and you can just continue going through that, and it's got everything you need to sort of help you through. And so if you've got a pen and one of these books in your pocket, you can start running the operation right away. Digital wise, we've really started to adopt technology around the satellite communication devices, especially as things such as smartphones are now being able to connect directly to the satellites. We do use the Garmin inReaches quite a bit for communicating team to team in the field in the backcountry, but also communicating with some people when they get lost and they activate their call for help. And so we can be in communication with them while they're out there on the trail or out there in the backcountry, waiting for someone to come to them so that we can get additional information, give them direction, and provide reassurance. Some of you that are involved in search and rescue may be familiar with the app called CalTopo. We use that extensively in the park, and we practice and drill on it all the time. We're encouraged to use that when we go on hikes for our own personal use, just to get familiar with it and maintain competency. And you can see there what's nice is it works offline, and when you come back into coverage area, it will download your tracks so that the command staff can see where we've been, what we've covered, and we can take pictures and geolocate them along that track. So that information can then be shared with our command staff and help to understand where we've been, what we saw, and where it was. And last year we started deploying satellite technology for internet, adopting the Starlink system, and making it fully off-grid, where we had the solar panels set up and we had batteries set up, and we could run the operation in a remote area off grid for extended operational periods without having to go and remove people from the backcountry, which allowed us to spend more time on the search effort than logistics. Speaking about culture, as I mentioned, training and developing that psychological safety is very important. We have structured trainings that happen on a regular basis, usually 2 times a month. And the people that come together here represented in just this one picture, we have law enforcement, we have general rangers that are non-commissioned that help with things like wildlife management and traffic management and really sort of anything else that needs to happen. They're pretty amazing people. We've got interpretive rangers, we've got a facilities manager, but they are all involved in search and rescue. And what's really cool is when we all show up to do a mission, it doesn't matter what your sort of real job is, or your full-time job or your full-time assignment is. When we're showing up as a search and rescue team, we're working as one unit, we're working as one group, and everyone just goes to work. And what's really cool about that is because we're training together and we've got those shared values, we've got that shared mental model, we're all watching out for each other, and we're all accountable together to make sure that we're all operating safely. We're operating safely for those that need our assistance, but also our colleagues out in the field. And of course, working in the backcountry or even the front country, working in the environment that we have is super variable, right? It could be everything from being in a village with a lost child, trying to find somebody in and around a crowd, all the way up to being way in the backcountry, wondering where somebody went sideways on a trail. And along with that comes complexity of the environment. We might be on a hillside, we might be in a deeply forested area, maybe we're operating on water, and then all of the dynamics that come with working out in the field, such as weather. As working in and around mountains, weather has a tendency to change very quickly. one way or the other. It can go from, cool to warm to hot to snowy to rainy to lightning and so forth. So we have to always sort of keep an eye on the dynamics, and we also have to keep out an eye out for our wildlife challenges that come along. And that all that together gives rise to consistency, which is super important for the people that are doing the job, because this is no one's full-time job. No one's doing SAR full-time, right? We're all doing whatever else that we do. And then when the call goes out, we have to come together and work as a team, work with competence and confidence. And that consistency in our training and in our practice and the way that we do things gives rise to that competence and that confidence. It also gives rise to reliability, right? Because we're building trust, not only trust in ourselves, but trust in our colleagues, trust in our equipment, trust in our processes. We're all aligned around that because of that reliability. And then sustainability over time, it really builds this momentum for the organization. So we have a success, we build on that success, we do it again, we practice it, we go into the field, we practice it in a real live event, we have a success, we learn from that, and you just continue to build that momentum over time. And so that's where your high reliability comes from, by doing that successively. So, with all of that in mind, I want to take you through four cases that I was involved with in 2024, which, by the way, was my first year working in a national park. It was my first year at Yellowstone. I didn't really have any sort of search and rescue experience. I was hired to work in the clinic as a nurse in Mammoth, and I found my way onto the emergency services team by way of a few introductions, and was also credentialed as a National Park Service paramedic. So, back to this map here, you'll see here is Mammoth, which is the headquarters of the park. And I've put a circle around where the search for this first SAR took place. So this was my very first search and rescue. I was working a shift at the clinic. We had just finished up. It was about 5:30 p.m. And my preceptor, Ranger Joe, came and picked me up and said, "Hop in. We've got a search and rescue. We're going to go. We're heading over to the Bunsen Peak." So Bunsen Peak is located just about 5 miles south of the headquarters of the park. It's a super nice trail to climb. It's maybe 2.4, 2.5 miles up to the top. It's known for having lots of grizzly bears around, but it's a very accessible place. So because it's so accessible and it's right off of the main loop, uh, many people go in and hike this trail. And so we got a call for help. It literally was just that. Somebody needs help on the trail. We're not sure what's going on. We didn't know where they were, and so we deployed. Now, because it was only 5 miles from headquarters, most people were still just finishing up from the day and weren't too far from our SAR cache. And so we mobilized the resources gathered together at the trailhead, and got a two-person hasty team deployed. So that hasty team made access to the trail here from the trailhead. You can see where we're setting up our operations, and they went up trail. And so the peak of Bunsen is right here, and you can see it's snow covered because this is in early May in 2024. Because they were on the trail so quickly and they were a two-person team, they made contact with the party fairly rapidly. And because of the location, we had excellent communications on the radio because the repeater tower happened to just be right on top of the mountain. So we had a size up transmitted, which was there was a group of about 5 people together hiking the trail. They were coming back down the trail. They saw a black bear. They pulled out their bear spray. Somebody tripped over a log, knocked off his safety, and sprayed his colleagues with bear spray. That was the scenario. They were about, probably a mile, so probably halfway up or on their way down. Um, we had the medical and the litter team staged right there at the trailhead. We happened to have a full EMS team. That's Ranger Joe there in the middle. I was attached with him to the EMS sector. And we also happen to have EMS physicians, residents that come to the park that spend a few weeks as a rotation as a part of their training. So we had a couple of them that were there, and the gentleman on the far left there was one of our EMS physician residents, and the person on the right there is Shannon, who is one of our search and rescue gurus, as I like to call it. She is phenomenal, and just does a great job with all things SAR. So they were doing some just-in-time training with the EM residents. We had a low acuity patient. We just guided them down the trail by the Hasty team. We did some flushing of the eyes and some psychological first aid and treated and release. This was a type 5 incident. It was one operational period. It didn't require a whole lot of coordination. We were sort of start to end done in about 2 hours, which was good because it was getting cold and things were getting cooler as the sun set. Case two was actually not too far from case one. So the Hoodoos is an area that's really interesting. If you've been to Yellowstone National Park, or if you get an opportunity to go there, this is the place that you go to feel like you're in the Flintstones. It's got these massive boulders that are a result of a crumbling travertine terrace that was a hot spring that built up over time and then dried up, and then as sort of the earth underneath it eroded, it crashed down over the hillside down into the ravine. And so you've got these big boulders that are on either side of the Grand Loop. They're very fascinating. People are always pulling over. There's a pool out there, and they like to go and sort of just climb around on them, and that's kind of fun. So there was this family, they had just gotten to Yellowstone. They were driving through on their way to their campsite. They saw the hoodoos, they stopped, and they got out and they were wandering around. And they had some young kids, and they were sort of hopping from boulder to boulder, and Dad thought he would just join in the fun. And yeah, well, that's where things went sideways. Interesting thing though was we were having a training day in Mammoth, and so we were just 3 miles north of the area of where we were called to, and so we had just finished our training when the page went out, and staff was in Mammoth from all over the park, and so when the call came out, one of our paramedic and SAR techs was driving right past the hoodoos at the time, so he just pulled over, established command, and started assessing the situation. And what we found was there was a gentleman in his late 30s who had a lower extremity injury about 100 yards off the Grand Loop. Now, that sounds fairly easy, right? Except you've got these boulders between you and where the patient is. And so it became fairly technical, although I would say it was probably more country than backcountry. So we established command and operations right there on the side of the highway, if you will. The greatest hazard that we had was actually traffic, and so we went into traffic management mode, more so to protect the teams as we did alternating flow. We've got our medical team and our hasty team gathered in just a few minutes because, again, we were all just finishing up our training, and we were able to get them inserted into the patient fairly quickly. The size up was really, here's a 38-year-old male that was jumping between boulders, and he dropped down to the ground after hitting some gravel on top of one, and had an open tib fib fracture of his one extremity. So we deployed the medical and the litter teams down to the patient. Again, this was a type 5 incident. We knew we were only going to have one operational period here. So we knew that in short order we would be finishing up. We immobilized that patient. We got them packaged on the Stokes. They got some pain medication and whatnot. And then we had to do a pass-through rescue relay, which is where you're taking that stretcher. The rescuers are making a line, people standing across from each other and passing the Stokes basket between them because the terrain was so technical, you couldn't really hold the Stokes basket and walk with it. Once we got them to the road, we transferred them to the EMS stretcher. Ranger Joe and I took that patient to the hospital, the nearest hospital, which is about an hour and 15 minutes away from that location. We gave them pain control meds, some antibiotics and antiemetics, and I learned on that call that ice cream is required after each call for rehab of the staff. The third case is Hell Roaring Trail. Now, Hell Roaring Trail is a really cool trail. It's one of those places where lots of people read about. It's got a phenomenal overview. It's got some cool switchbacks that take you down into this really neat ravine. And then you sort of go out on this plateau and get to be down near the Yellowstone River. So lots of people are attracted to this. Many people underestimate the severity and the physical fitness level that's required to successfully do this. Um, there is almost no shade along the trail. And by the way, Yellowstone is high desert, so the average humidity level, and this would have been mid-June at that time, would be somewhere around 15%. So people, usually underestimate the amount of water that they need to bring, and also underestimate the difficulty of the trail. So this day was a very busy day. This was Father's Day weekend. This was a Saturday before Father's Day. We had lots of things going on. We had a rodeo going on in Gardner where we were doing medical standbys. We had a major trauma in the morning, about 8 a.m. Some knucklehead decided to take his skateboard and come down the road in downtown Mammoth, from the upper terraces down to the Fort Yellowstone area, and T-boned a car that was pulling out of a parking lot, putting a huge dent in the side. He had a huge head injury. He got RSI'd and flown out to the trauma center an hour away by air. We had a parade later on in the morning that we were involved with. Of course, during the parade, we had a head-on car crash. It was about 10 miles outside of town that we ran mutual aid for one of our folks. And then we had a wind event on top of all this. So think about, power outages, intermittent power outages, lots of fire alarms going off, paging all of the different fire companies to respond to the different fire alarms. We're getting all kinds of things happening. So, all this is going on before noon. And then we get the call for the SAR. So already everyone's tapped out. We've already had a full day. Everyone's running lots of different directions. And we get called for a gentleman that had fallen off a horse on the Hell Roaring Trail. And that's all we had at the initial dispatch. So hasty team deployed, and got there fairly quickly to the trailhead, made their way down trail. They had to go all the way down to the very bottom of the ravine into the plateau where the patient was found. The patient fell off the horse. They landed on their head. They did have a period of unresponsiveness, upwards up to about 10 minutes, according to the bystanders. They also had an extremity injury, and the patient was assessed to be about 350 pounds. There's an asterisk there for a reason, and I'll tell you about that in just a moment. The trail itself, it's narrow, it's steep, it's hot, there's no shade, and by the way, there were a bajillion mosquitoes out there looking to eat us. This was also a Type 5 incident. It took a little bit longer because we needed to muster some resources. We were a little bit further away from our SAR cache, so we had to have an assembly of the team, gather the equipment, go through our risk assessment, and then make our way out to the Hell Roaring Trail, which was about maybe 30 minutes away from downtown Mammoth, which is where we were responding from. The medical care and the operations that came with that, we needed two litter teams because of the difficulty of bringing a 350-pound patient up a set of switchbacks and an elevation gain of well over 600 feet. And while the patient rode a horse down, they rode a wheeled litter back up. You can see us there in that picture, working our way up that trail. That was the litter team that I was on, team two. The first team would do one switchback section and then go ahead to the next area above us and then rest and hydrate, and then we would keep alternating that way. This was a very technical trail. It was very narrow. It was very steep. The mosquitoes were everywhere, and we had severe winds also going on, so we weren't actually able to insert our helicopter down into the ravine to get them out. That's why we're doing this manually. Patient got oxygen. We put an IV in. They got pain control, capnography, and then we transported them to the hospital 1.5 hours away. It turned out that the patient had signed up to go on this horseback ride trip with one of the outfitters, and he underreported his weight to the horse ride outfitter. So, you know what that horse did once it got to the bottom of the ravine? It looked back up and said, "I don't think I'm going to carry you back up," and actually bucked him off. So there you have it. Case four was the most complex case of all of these. Now, case four is Eagle Peak, and Eagle Peak is the most remote location in the lower 48 states, let alone Yellowstone National Park. The closest road to to Eagle Peak is 28 miles away. So you can't drive there. Walking there is quite a challenge, and it involves a series of steps to be able to get to Eagle Peak in Yellowstone. So I just want to point out a couple of things. The first SAR was here. SAR 2 was just north of that. SAR 3 was out over in this area. And now SAR 4 is way down here in the lower southeast corner of the park, which you can see the road network is nowhere near, right? So what we had to do in order to get to Eagle Peak, if you want to go climb Eagle Peak, is you go down to this area here in Lake Village. You go to Bay Bridge. You get on a boat. They drive you down here on a boat. You hop off over here somewhere on the shore, and then you make a day hike in south and then back up north to a base camp, and then the next day you can then climb, and you're in striking distance to get up to Eagle Peak. So it's a complex area to get to if that's a goal of someone here in the park. It is 11,372 feet elevation. It's the highest point in Yellowstone. And we had a young man named Austin King, and he worked for Xanterra, which is one of the concessionaires in the park. And his goal for the season was to climb Eagle Peak. Now, Austin was an athlete. He did triathlons. He worked pretty hard. He was a long distance runner. He was certainly an athlete by all regards. He went on the 14th of September on a boat and got his ride over to the shore and started hiking in towards Eagle Peak. He ran into a backcountry ranger on the 16th in an area that he had not been planning to be in, but found his way to. And then on the 17th, he made contact with his family from the top of Eagle Peak by cell phone. And he talked to his mom and let her know that he made it to the top and that he needed to get down because he was wearing a t-shirt and a windbreaker, and he had encountered fog and snow and sleet and hail and rain and wind. And he was working on getting off of there pretty quickly and getting back down to his base camp. That was the last we heard of Austin. Austin disappeared thereafter. On September 20th, he was due to get back on that boat and make his way back to Bridge Bay. And when the boat captain showed up, there was no Austin. And that was the first indication that there was a problem. So we've got 17, 18, 19, 20, 72 hours elapse from last known contact. And when the first call comes in over the radio to our communications center, indicating that we have an overdue hiker. That was about 5 p.m. The sun was setting, it was getting dark, things were getting cold, and that kicked off the SAR call. At that point in time, there was not much to do that night. The plans for initiating SAR activities started the next day in the morning. And on September 21st, the whole SAR kicked off. Now, because of where we were in the park, we needed to move operations, we needed to get resources, and it became quite a bit of a logistical feat to get all of the people that we need, all of the equipment that we need, and all of the resources down to an area where we could work safely, securely, to be able to shuttle people in and out of the area that we need to get to. Because as I mentioned, there's no way to drive to that location. So we literally had to fly in our search teams to the area of activity. So this became quite an extended event. It was a Type 3 incident. We had multiple operational periods. We had lots of logistical support that needed to be wrapped around to make the team successful. We had external resources coming in. The search and rescue team from the Grand Tetons came with their aircraft to help search. We had Park County, Wyoming resources coming in from their search and rescue team to augment our staff. We established a forward operating base in Fishing Bridge area, in an area that was secure. We have a helibase there designated for operations in that area, and it's an area where the general public does not go to. You have to sort of go through a gate and then go down a long path, and we have two helipads there that we established an air operations base. We had our helitack team for our wildland fire group there. They brought their team and their communication and their support team for fueling and maintaining aircraft deconflictions and so forth. And then we also had to sort of feed and water all of these people and do a check-in, check-out process for accountability, along with briefing, debriefing, collecting clues, and so forth. The gentleman here with this box, this is a portable repeater, radio repeater, because he did have to talk around a couple of mountain peaks, so we had to go strategically locate that. That was one of the first things that happened. This gentleman's a radio tech in our radio shop. He organized that and went out on the aircraft, set that up so that we could have direct communications by radio from the helibase to the search and rescue teams that were in the search area. So that was day one. Day two through the 30th, we had lots of search efforts and clues that we had found on the initial search day that led us to believe that Austin would be found more around the Eagle Peak area and less so near his campsite. His campsite had some evidence of probably some bears or some sort of animals that got into that. There was no human activity associated with that. And so we really started to focus the search in and around the mountain itself. And we had many teams that were rotating in and out. And remember, we still have a whole park to run, right? We're still busy. It's still September. There's still lots of people there. And we still have normal operations that we have to maintain. So we're cycling teams in and out over this period of September 22nd to September 30th, which is when I became involved in the operation a couple of days after it initiated. We had to have this extensive use of the aircraft just to get the people in and out. We were shuttling 4 and 5, 3 or 4 person teams at the beginning of each operational period day. over to the mountain. They were given a sector to search, and then we had to bring them back. So there was a lot of back and forth. The flight was about 20 minutes from helibase to the point of insertion, and then coming back. So there was a lot of things to just coordinate, and from a safety perspective, there were lots of moving parts where people needed to just be heads up, heads on a swivel, have their full mind present, and having all of our right people in the right place, making sure that we're doing all the right things for them. The search area itself was a challenging environment. They encountered strong winds, snow and ice was present there. We're operating over 11,300 feet. And it was an area that was very, very windy during that period of time. We had two helicopters, ours from the Yellowstone Park, and then the Grand Teton Park helicopter spent each day searching different sectors, looking up and down the crevasses for evidence of perhaps where Austin may have fallen. We were looking for clues and footprints. We found lots of interesting clues, we'll call them, but they all sort of led to dead ends. So each day, at the end of the day, we would determine which next sectors we wanted to spend our time. And we also were using drones at this point. Drones were a new addition in 2024 to the search and rescue toolkit. And so we would go with, they would fly the drones, they'd capture all of those videos, and then like they had somebody to spend all the night to look through all of the video that they captured to sort of adjudicate, what they captured and what might be of value. Over the period of time between September 21st and October 1st, we covered over 3,225 miles of rugged terrain. You can see here, and this is all the downloaded data brought together by using the CalTopo app, and it really, you can see we covered a lot of ground in serious detail. The red's the ground folks following the trails, the blue aviation piece, and then the black is the drone. The search transitioned, unfortunately, October 2nd and 24 from a rescue operation to a recovery operation. Snow was coming in. We were starting to just get into a different time period, unfortunately. Later on in October, on the 15th, a note from King from the top of the mountain was released, which is really, really interesting. His father gave permission to share this, and it just describes the experience and his excitement and the conditions that he faced. So just let me read this to you. He says, I can't feel my fingers, and my glasses are so fogged from the ruthless weather of the mountains. I truly cannot believe I am here after what I took to be here. I endured rain, sleet, hail, and most wind I have ever felt. I could not see eagle for most of the day due to the most fog I have seen. I face I I free soloed too many cliffs to get here and walked up to the peak from the connecting peak, aka not the right path. I'm 22 years old and I will never forget today the rest of my life. Life is beautiful. Go out and live it. Austin King. And so that's the last we heard of Austin. And the search continues. And even this year in 2025, there was renewed searching activities hoping to find Austin. And we've not found him yet. And so there he is. He's become a part of Yellowstone and has certainly left his mark on the park and many of us. So I'm just going to end with Austin's final words, which is life is beautiful. Go out and live it. And I'll pause there and we can open it up to conversation.
Thank you so much, Scott. Incredible presentation. Thank you for giving us such a vulnerable and transparent look into what your time doing this has been like. We really appreciate that insider peek. And before we open it up to questions on the floor, we're going to do our giveaway for the night, which tonight is a My Medic Sidekick kit. And of course, some Wild Med Wednesday swag with some stickers and magnets and some other CPR masks and swag from Dan. You must be present to win. You do have to be inside the US for me to ship this prize to you. But if you are out of country and you win, I'd still love to send you some stickers. So, with that, I will share our random name picker. And let's spin the wheel. Nicole Phillips, are you still here? Come off mute or say something in the chat so we know you're here. And if not, we're gonna remove you and keep going.
She's here. She said I am.
Oh, thank you. I can't see the chat when I'm sharing my
It's
screen like
okay.
this.
I got you. She's here.
Nicole, email us at wildmedwednesday@gmail.com with your mailing address so we can get you your prize. Congratulations.
Scott, seriously, thank you again for such a good talk. Every time I talk to you, I'm like, you're just amazing. And that was so well done. I really appreciate you being here with us.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Hmm. I
So
know I
we
met
had
you
one
while that.
question. We
Oh,
had one question in the chat while you were talking, and someone is curious what your go-to pain control meds are in Yellowstone.
Yeah, so we've got several options. Fentanyl for quick hits and sort of the short-term acting. We've got Dilaudid for longer acting. Um, and then we've got ketamine for dissociative and some pain relief. So some combination or all those sorts of things are up for consideration and use. And we've got a fairly aggressive set of protocols that allow us to use those offline. Um, there is a threshold that you're supposed to be in contact with med control if you're going to go beyond that. But when you're in the backwoods, that sometimes not is not an option. But we've got a nice formulary available to us, and we pack those in with us on each one of those missions.
Thank you. If you guys also have questions about Scott's journey to be getting on a SAR team, anything about his educational or career pathway, or just living in Yellowstone, or anything else that intrigued you about his talk, we invite you to ask those questions also. And we also love networking and hearing about other people's experiences. So if you have relevant experiences you'd like to share, we'd love to hear those too.
there was also a question in the chat about ham radio and asking if that was feasible. Somebody explained that you have to have a license to operate. But it looks like um, there was talk about using newer tech like mesh tastic. So we just wanted to ask you a little bit more about your radio communication in the park.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of a radio geek, so I'm a licensed amateur radio operator. We had another SAR that the initial point of contact came through a local repeater in Idaho, reporting that there was a group, I think, of about four people, and one of them was diabetic or something, and they're having some sort of complications. And anyway, they got into the local repeater. That local repeater club got in contact with the local 911 PSAP, who then contacted our PSAP there in the park because they were on our property. And so we had that, and I was actually able to go to our EOC in the 911 center and used my ham radio capabilities to talk to them through that repeater. And was relaying as the helicopter flew to them because we just did an insertion and brought them out in the aircraft because they were ambulatory. And but I was able to communicate to them where to go, how to prep for the helicopter to come in, and then bring that aircraft in and communicate with them successfully. And we're able to determine search urgency was pretty low. The condition and criticality of the patient was fairly low, and we knew that we didn't need to sort of go any further than that. So yeah, that's a cool thing. My son, who's an IT guy, he's been playing with Meshtastic and while I was at Yellowstone this summer, and so we're going to play with some of that over the winter, and we actually talked about maybe how we could incorporate that and use that at the park. And by the way, our emergency services chief, Jim Moore, and he's a radio geek guy and a tech guy too. So he'd be thrilled to see how we could get Meshtastic or some of those things into the park as well. So I'm all for let's have some fun with this.
I have a question that I just want to direct you to talk about, really, because I kind of have a little insight from you. But what are some of the obstacles? What are some of the ways that you overcame the wildlife obstacles that you had going on, especially during the searches?
Yeah, there was one of our teams during the Eagle Peak search that actually got bluff charged by three bears. No one told me that bears can sort of work together. But we had a team of I think it was four or five, and they were working a trail, and these three bears bluff charged them. And so it was again, it's we pulled that team right off the mountain, sent the aircraft to go get them. But it was a challenge, and that area of the park is so freaking remote. And here we are at the end of September when all of the bears are in hyperphagia, and so they were everywhere. So it was again, groups of four or five. We beefed up the numbers from three to four or five. Everyone had bear spray with them. We had law enforcement, so they had firearms with them and so forth. But it was definitely a challenge and something to consider.
Thank you. I wanted to hear more about that, obviously.
Um, I didn't know they could work together and bluff charge you either. Could you tell us a little bit more about what training you do for prolonged field care or extended evacuations?
Yeah, so we've got quarterly trainings that we do. We call them callbacks. And what's really fun is we take over one of the out of service campgrounds in the park, and we make that the base of operations for the week. And regardless of whatever the weather is, it's just like when you get called out, right? Whatever you just the mantra is dress for the weather. And you come and you can stay there if you want, or you can travel in and out every day. But we have a base of operations, and we bring in our medical directors, our attendings, our EMS fellows, our EM trained team that comes in and works with us, and we develop four or five different scenarios, and we put those scenarios about a half mile or a mile away in that camp area. And so you get dispatched to a GPS coordinate for an unknown medical problem. And so you have to sort of decide, and we do the same thing. We establish command, we create an operations group, we pick our hasty team. That hasty team picks the few pieces of equipment that they think they need for initial patient contact and stabilization, and then calling back a size up and for the litter team to bring in whatever additional or specialty equipment. And we've done everything from working in arrest near drownings to simple orthopedic with technical extraction, with delayed care out in the field. And we actually do it in real time under whatever conditions we seem to be having that day. And so it's really fun because some of the medical directors are out there in the field actually being the patient. And so they get to see that and they realize that, medical control is great on paper and it's great when you've got a cell phone that has a signal. But when you're way out there and you don't have anything, you've got to rely on people's training. And so, we go down that decision matrix of, we've got the protocols, and so now that's great for the first couple of hours, but now what do we do? And so the mantra of that is what's our gestalt, and how do we want to go about caring for those patients until we can get them back and sort of to the online grid to get further direction. So we carry all those sorts of things with the antibiotics and extended pain control. And a lot of what we're doing is maybe even considering reducing dislocations or straightening fractures that have compromised blood flow and those sorts of things. And again, building shelters and providing just sort of the Maslow hierarchy of, food, water, shelter, and fire and warmth and those kinds of things. So it's all real training in situ. And so that's how we develop that skill set and build on our own knowledge and experience.
I think a related question in the chat, correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin, is how often did you hoist operations or helicopter evac over packing out by ground litters, and which tactic is more often utilized?
Yeah, that's a great question. Last two seasons, we did not have a key role filled for the helicopter hoist manager. And so we were not able to do any hoist and we were not able to do any short hauls. Those are tools in the toolkit from the past that have been used, but we were not able to use those during these past two seasons. So unfortunately, those are sort of off the table for us. Um, so most of what we're doing is really getting in, inserting, and sometimes what we'll do is we'll insert with the park helicopter, which is not configured as a medical aircraft. It's configured as a crew transport and equipment movement. We'll insert there, get a size up, and then if the patient does need evac out of there, if we can safely bring in one of our surrounding commercial life flights, we'll do that, bring them in and pack them up and fly them out that way. Otherwise, if they're ambulatory or if they're ambulatory with assist, we'll put them into the park aircraft and just fly them out.
Are there medical slash rescue flight requirements in Wyoming? Because I used to work in Western Montana out of the Missoula area, and they had these like really strict requirements of like basic, not only takeoff and landing, but kind of the whole flight. You had to be able to visualize ground, no instrument flying. So we wound up having to do like a lot of ground transport and movement and stuff because of that. Is that the same in Wyoming or with the Park Service?
Yeah, we're fortunate that we've got a fair number of aircraft around. Again, it's a big wide space out west, right? So even if it's, close by, quote unquote, I'm from Pittsburgh, we have like 50 helicopters within like 20 miles here. Um, but out west, it's like, the nearest aircraft is maybe 40 minutes away, with additional aircraft an hour, hour and a half away. And they're all VFR operations. They do not fly IFR, especially into the scenes that we would be asking them to fly into. So those are sometimes challenging insertion points for an aircraft to come in. We do have a fair number of A-stars that have that high altitude capability, single engine aircraft, one patient transport capability. And there's a program that has a couple of EC-145s around. They're more geared towards the critical care interhospital transport business, although occasionally we'll get them on a scene from time to time.
Thank you. Dan asks in the chat, what additions have you made to your own pack in anticipation slash precaution of needing evac slash rescuing yourself since doing this work?
Yeah, that's a great question. I carry a lot of granola bars. I carry two cans of bear spray in my pack. I have three different ways to communicate, including a dual band portable radio that has public safety as well as amateur radio and GMRS frequencies because I hacked it. I have an Garmin InReach, and I also have an iPhone that can talk to the satellites. Oh, and I bring an extra battery pack too, and lots of layers of clothing, but that's normal stuff.
Excellent. Lots of snacks is key, no matter what age and what you're doing. Always more granola.
Exactly.
What's the most humorous place you've had to rescue someone from
Oh, humorous.
or situation?
Huh. There was a call for someone that dropped their phone into a pit toilet. We told them that phone was gone.
Yeah, why is there always a toilet involved?
Yeah.
Uh, Follow up to your gear. Do you think that solar panels for backpacks are worth it?
I actually have
Like
a
the portable
folding.
panels, little 5-watt ones that don't seem to be worth the wait.
Yeah, I actually have one in my vehicle that I carry with me so that if I feel like I'm going out somewhere and there's a possibility of an extended stay, that I'll throw that in my backpack with me. Yep.
Nice. Great questions, Dan.
Yeah, cool. I do have some book recommendations if anybody wants to see those. Yeah, you guys like books? Can I share again or am I still sharing? No.
I stopped your screen share so that I could share. Please share your screen. Make all the
Ooh.
recs.
Okay, 1 second. How do I get back to share my screen? Okay, stand by. Da, da.
And we can write them in the chat for you as well so people can save them.
Yeah, there's big excitement in the chat for this.
Okay, cool. 1 second. Okay, see it again? Cool. All right, so here's 3 books that I thought, this group would probably know about, or if not, you're going to want to know about. So the first one is wild rescues. So my wife and I, how I got to Yellowstone was my wife and I went there in 2022 for our 25th wedding anniversary, and we saw the clinic, and I'm like, hey, this is a cool place. I love it here. And how do we get to spend more time without spending more money? And while I was there, I bought that Wild Rescues book. Um, but Kevin Grange was a paramedic that worked in several of the national parks, including Yellowstone, and he just wrote a fantastic book. And it really sort of it made me just want to go there and just immerse myself. And I'm like, how do I get to do this? Like, this is really cool stuff. And yeah, so I would absolutely, hands down, say get that book. If you find anything I said tonight interesting or any of this sounds cool to you, go read that book. The second one was a book that was recommended to me by the medical director of the clinics at the Yellowstone National Park, Liz Edelstein. Some of you might know her. And that's called Last Season. And it's a story about an NPS seasonal backcountry ranger who was a ranger for 30 years, seasonal, and Randy Morgeson. And he was an expert in search and rescue and finding people, and he could just like read the land. He was like a guru of understanding just people behavior and how they responded to being lost in the park and could find them. And then he himself goes missing, and his colleagues that he trained uh, do the search for him. And it is a phenomenal story of not just the life and legacy of Randy Morgeson, but it is a phenomenal story of the ethos and the mindset and um, just the camaraderie of the SAR community and how they go about caring for one of their own. Again, it's another phenomenal story. And then the third one is a book that I read this year. It was just published, I think, last year. It's called A Walk in the Park. And I love this, it's sort of the tagline, the true story of a spectacular misadventure in the Grand Canyon. It's the story about these two crazy guys that decide that they want to hike the Grand Canyon, but not the way that most people would do it on the Angel Bright Trail. They want to hike the length of the Grand Canyon. Well, I don't know how many of you have been there, but there's no trail that goes the length of the Grand Canyon. And so these guys sort of plan this trip and sort of do this all on paper and the internet. And, they order a bunch of things from Amazon, a bunch of boxes show up, and they show up their first night to start their adventure. And they're basically opening boxes, cutting tags off, and trying to shove everything into their backpack. And they link up with this other group that has been sort of surveying the whole length of the Grand Canyon over decades and have incredible knowledge of the slot canyons and the unique areas that no one's ever been to except that one group. And they come together and they start learning from each other. And it's just a really interesting story about the history of the Grand Canyon, the way that people evolve their thinking and what they learn and how they adjust over time. And this group that started with, a bunch of boxes trying to shove everything into a backpack really became an experienced orienteering, adventuring, climbing, just an amazing group of people, really well skilled, and it just shows that adaptability and that tenacity to accomplish what it is that you want to accomplish, and the value of being partnered with and having the right people around you to do it. Those are
Excellent
my three books.
recommendation. Those are great. Sarah in the chat says that actually A Walk in the Park as an audiobook listen is really great because the author himself is narrating it.
Oh, cool.
It definitely matches appropriate inflection with timing of the story and stuff. And then Matthew recommends Ranger Confidential as another great National Park SAR EMS book.
Awesome. I'll look for that one next.
Is it
Awesome.
is it okay with you, Scott, if we share this? I took a screenshot, of course, for myself,
Sure.
but is it okay if we share it on our Instagram page?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
And then, if anyone wants to be in contact, feel free.
One final question from me, knowing what you know, what path would you recommend, or do you wish you took in an approach to starting off and continuing in SAR?
Cool. So, I've been doing this emergency medicine stuff for almost 40 years. I'm going to tell you, it basically like renewed my entire excitement and career because I didn't have to discard anything, right? I take all of my experience, all of my adventuresomeness, all of the things that I've learned over the years and get to bring it to a whole new setting. And it was really exciting to be able to bring that and be challenged to think in different ways and to sort of reboot my brain with a different set of criteria. And it wasn't, a 20-minute transport to a hospital or working in a well-equipped emergency department. It's, wow, we've got a lot of logistics we need to think about. We've got a lot of complexity that's injected. The whole thing's dynamic. Yeah, it, uh, it was really fun. So I'm glad that this came along at this point in my career because I'm just having the time of my life.